The College Baseball Experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play their fantasy pick'em for a chance to win 100x in NBA, MLB, MMA, NHL, golf, and more. Sign up today at UnderdogFantasy.com using promo code TCESGPN to get a 100% deposit match. We're also brought to you by the NFL Draft Bingo. Yes, you can play NFL Draft Bingo for a chance to win $100 a chance to win a $100 SGPN gift card exclusively on the SGPN app. So go over there, download the SGPN app on Google Play or the App Store. NFL Draft Bingo. It's free to play. $100 SGPN gift card. And let it ride. Yes. It is showtime here on the College Baseball Experience. We are here for a different style of weekend preview show. Normally we're doing Friday picks with a little bit of a weekend look ahead type thing. Today I'm here on Wednesday night, technically Thursday morning here as it is 12:20 Eastern my time. Recording this live after the college football guys were doing their show live earlier today on YouTube. And the reason why I'm doing a Wednesday show is because the music was still going in the background. I apologize about that. But the reason why we're doing a show here on Wednesday / Thursday morning is because the NFL draft is in Detroit. It is a once in 32 year at least time thing that I'm going to be hammered at all 3 days for this weekend. So I am going to do this. So I have 11.7 series picks that I'm going to be giving out today. So that's for the entire weekend. But also there are some lines, albeit shitty lines on Thursday. We do have some lines for 4 college baseball games, as there are only 4 on Thursday. But I've jotted down every top 25 series because that's just what I've come to expect and just be able to guarantee that we'll get odds every weekend. They offer the SEC, the ACC, and the top 25 series. I've listed every top 25 series here, and I've also included a couple of key conference races because this is what I always do with this show. As we get closer and closer to NCAA tournament time, I want everybody, even myself, I do this for myself, to be as acclimated with some tournament teams as we could possibly be. So there's a couple of notable matchups in the mid majors as well that, won't have betting odds, but it's still good to have an eye on. And I'll explain why. One of the teams, Ryder, from the MAC, the MAAC, last year they beat Coastal Carolina in game 1 of the regional. Like, we wouldn't have been able to bet on Ryder at all during the season last year. And if you didn't know anything about them, which I'm sure plenty of people didn't, they went out there and knocked off a host in game 1 of the regional. So, we're also the beginning of this show right now. Actually, we are going to run through the magic numbers in the SEC win totals. So I have the conference standings here right in front of me. I'm going to share my screen on YouTube, and we're going to run through these real quickly here today. Is that the right? Yeah. Okay. So this website just isn't formatted for me to share correctly or even better than it could be. So I'll zoom in, and then we'll get running. So the reason why I wanted to do this was because do we have a good view on this? I got to go back to StreamYard and look. All right. The advertisements on the side. It is what it is. So Kentucky's clinched. They won 15 games this year so far in 6 SEC weekends. They've lost only 3 games. Their win total was 14.5 entering the preseason. So they're 15-3. That cashed. My prediction in the preseason was that Kentucky would go 15-15 and hit the over. Well, they would need to lose 12 straight to go 15-15, but they've gotten me that over. Tennessee, they're currently sitting at 12-6. This is my number one play, confidence wise in the preseason, that they would go over 17.5 wins. So we need the Vols to win 8 more games. And here's the rest of their season. They host Missouri for 3. Gotta get 2. Then they go at Florida, which, I mean, Florida's down right now. If you could win that series, that is amazing. However, in the preseason, I was not counting on them winning it. So I have them losing the series 2-1. And then they go to Vanderbilt, and I actually had them beating Vandy. We'll talk about the Commodores in a little bit, but I was a little bit down on the Commodores, and that one's going to be a sweat. And then Tennessee finishes off with South Carolina at Lindsey Nelson, which is definitely a winnable series when you get the Gamecocks away from home in conference. So it's going to be sweaty. I think depending on how the Missouri series goes here, we could clean up half of the 6 wins that we need. But I feel pretty good knowing that we've got 12 games to go, and we just need to win half of them to cash this over. The next team here, let's talk about those Vanderbilt Commodores. I had them going 13-17 in the preseason. Currently in conference, they are 10-8. They are probably going to overshoot my projection here by quite a bit. The preseason win total was 17.5, though. So we still got plenty of room to spare. The Final Four series for the Doors go as follows. They host Mississippi State. Then they go at Georgia, which could be tough because Georgia can hit the shit out of the ball. Then they host Tennessee, and then they go at Kentucky. So I had Vandy winning 2-1 against Mississippi State here. I had Vandy winning or losing 2-1 at Georgia, which definitely could happen. That's a hell of a call for me in the preseason. That we'll talk about Georgia in a little bit here too. Vanderbilt, I had losing 2-1 at home against Tennessee there. And then I had Vandy losing 2-1 at Kentucky. So if all were to stay, all of my predictions there, they would get 5 wins here. They would finish 15-15. Still hits the under. I think all of my predictions hold. I think they win 2-1 against Mississippi State. I think Georgia's got a shot to win that series against Vandy, even if they sweep or even if Vandy wins 2-3 at Georgia. I think Tennessee and Kentucky will give Vandy all they can handle. That one's going to be a fun sweat coming down to the rest end of the season. Now we get to my second. So Vanderbilt was my third most confident preseason win total bet here in the SEC. Georgia was my second most confident. The win total was set at 9.5. Currently, they're 9-9 in conference. We just need one more win, so we're good. Hopefully you just don't get swept 4 weekends in a row, Georgia. Georgia are at Texas A&M here. There's a good chance for a sweep. They host Vanderbilt. You should be able to take one of those. And then Georgia's at South Carolina. Founders Park's tough to play at. And then Georgia hosts Florida. There's a possibility that they get swept in 4 straight series. However, this Georgia team looks pretty good this year. Next up, South Carolina's sitting 9-9. Their win total in the preseason was set at 16.5. I had them going 18-12, but I was not too confident in this pick. The win total was set at 16.5. Their final 12 games, so they would need to go to get to 17 wins. They would need to go 8-4 in the last 4 weekends here. They host Kentucky, then they're at Missouri, then they host Georgia, at Tennessee. That one's probably unlikely to happen. Then we go to Florida, 8-10 currently. They already came in on the under. So their total was 20.5. So the best they can finish is 20-10. So they just clinched it last Saturday in their loss to Vanderbilt, and their game 2 loss to Vanderbilt. Then Missouri here was interesting because I got I had them going 6-24 in the SEC. I had them finishing under 7.5. Colby actually bet this, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this one's going to end up being an L. All they have to do is steal one. They go to Tennessee, then they host South Carolina, host Auburn. That's probably when they steal one here against Auburn, and then they go to Mississippi State. Tough schedule remaining, but I think they'll hit that over there. Arkansas's 14-4. This one was tied with Florida for the highest win total in the preseason, set at 20.5. Arkansas needs to go 7-5 in their final 4 series to hit the preseason win total. They host Florida. They go to Kentucky. They host Mississippi State. They go to Texas A&M. Those are 2 very, very tough road series. You could easily see 1-2, 1-2, and 1-2. And then Florida's good enough to take one at Arkansas. I don't think they will. But if they go 2-1 there, that's 4 wins. We're just saying they could go 6-6 in this stretch if they go 2-1 against Florida and Mississippi State, and then they go 1-2 against A&M and Kentucky. They do not hit this over. So that's also a pretty fun sweat as we come down to the end of the year. I did lean over. I had them finishing 21-9, but I did not have any action on that one. And then in this one, the preseason, I remember Colby specifically stating we could both eat shit on Texas A&M or, they're kind of just what we thought they were going to be, which is I think we had them the 5th best team in the SEC, but we definitely saw the path where this could be an elite Aggies team if the pitching panned out, and it did, and the offense is as advertised. So they have 13 wins right now. The preseason win total for the Aggies was 16.5. Your magic number is 4-8 to finish the season. Mississippi State's 10-8. The preseason win total was 11.5. They just need 2 more wins. So I don't think it's worth going through the schedule there. We did it for Georgia. Let's just run through Mississippi State's schedule real quick. They're at Vandy, they host Bama, they're at Arkansas, they host Missouri. That weekend against Missouri, if it's really, really sweaty coming down to the last weekend, the weekend against Missouri is going to help you out. Alabama. This was my 4th and final bet when it comes to preseason SEC win totals. Alabama's 7-11 currently. The preseason win total was 14.5. I have the under. Alabama would need to finish the season 8-4 to bust this under. The final 4 weekends for the Crimson Tide at Mississippi State, Both of those are 2 of the toughest road environments in the SEC. Then they host LSU, which in my case, I thought LSU was going to be the 4th best team in the SEC in the preseason. So that one might hurt. They might take that series when I wasn't expecting them to. I had LSU winning 2 of 3 there. And then they go to Auburn, which no matter how bad Auburn is this season, it's a rivalry game and they're on the road. So they're on the road in the final 3 of 4 weekends. I like where I'm at with the Alabama under. Then we hit Ole Miss here. Ole Miss's preseason win total was 11.5. I had them slightly under. I had them finishing 11-19. Currently, they have 6 wins. They're 6-12. They would need to finish the season 6-6 to hit an over here. The final 4 weekends for Ole Miss goes Alabama, they host, then they're at Auburn, then they host Texas A&M, then they're at LSU. You have to get 4 wins in the first 2 weekends here. If you have an Ole Miss over, you need 4 wins against Alabama, Auburn. If you have an Ole Miss under, I think 3 or 2 wins is best case scenario. Because hosting Texas A&M, I don't think they have a great shot at winning that series, and at LSU is going to be a tough one. So I think the under is in good shape there. LSU's already hit the under. They were the first team to finalize their win total in the preseason. Their win total was sitting at 19.5. Currently, they're 5-13. And then Auburn's 2-16. Right now, they would, if they were to win out, they still wouldn't hit it. It was 14.5. So if they won all 12, they would just finish 14-16. That isn't under. that is hit if you were on the Arkansas under this year. That wraps up the SEC Magic Numbers segment for this show. We're going to hit an advertisement real quick before I get into this weekend's action. It's going to be a short show because there's no betting odds really for me on a lot of these games. So, so the NFL draft is this week. Sports Gambling Podcast has you covered all week with NFL draft props, mock drafts, and the NFL draft watch party. So tune in Thursday night live on the Sports Gambling Podcast YouTube page and hang with the guys for the best NFL draft watch party out there. Currently, the plan is for me to be representing the Detroit Lions. We do pick 29th or whatever it is. So we are in the back of the draft. And if my phone's dead, my phone's dead. I have not committed to this thing because of that very likely scenario. So also download the SGPN app on the Apple or Google Play Store for your free shot. Play our bingo game. I don't even know how this works yet. That's me being a bad host. I haven't even tuned in to, create or just receive a bingo card yet for this NFL draft. I don't know how specific it's getting with like players going to specific teams or just a player going in the top 10, top 5. I have no idea, but you can win a $100 SGPN gift card if you get a bingo with one of these NFL draft bingo cards. Also, the NBA playoffs are here. Our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for all of you guys. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's fun. I was writing daily/nightly articles for college basketball from December to February. We were hitting at 62% there. When you're winning, it is fun. So Underdog is available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched their Champions player versus player format in Florida. So make sure you sign up with our code TCESGPN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code TCESGPN. Checking in on the YouTube chat here. Nathan Cerna says, Noah B, I'm ready to cash, my man. I've been on MLB lately, though. I mean, college baseball is always going to be here up until the late June. We'll have you anytime. Game is growing. We don't care when we get you, but I mean, our version of the game is very fun and exciting as well. Ryan Hasty says, best college baseball show on the interweb. Thank you very much, Hasty. Cerna says tons of MLB early action on Thursdays. Yes, for sure. And Cerna says, I like the ECU baseball boys are good. They are. They're right now. If the season was to end, they'd have a really good shot at being a national seed. Ryan Hasty saying, we believe every moment. Hasty says, great work on the SEC futures, Noah. Gonna smash. That's my hope. I mean, I feel like we're in good shape with 3 of the 4. Vanderbilt's going to be the sweatiest one of the bunch, I feel like. NC Street News says, yo. Hasty says 3 is a magic number. SEC is the magic number. Thomas Grimshaw says it's going to be a 10-unit weekend. I have my fingers crossed. I hope. And then Hasty says, I hope you have a blast at the draft, Noah. The LeBaron will love a trip to the city. It will, for sure. Speaking of LeBarons, we'll talk about LeBaron Johnson in a little bit here, too. All right, so let's start off with the series that are beginning on Friday. We'll work this thing backwards. We'll go from Friday to 11.7 Pick'em series, and then we'll talk about the Thursday odds. So first game that I wrote down, these are all in chronological order on Friday. This one's taking place in the MAAC. I hinted at it early in the beginning of the show. Niagara at Rider. They're both 11-1 in conference right now. Both of them very, very good. On paper, Niagara has been the better team all around this year, both on the mound and at the plate. However, Rider's gone dancing in 2 of the last 3 seasons. They're the home team here, and they're undefeated at their own park. So this is going to be an uphill climb for the Purple Eagles. but it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I would say if I no betting odds are going to be out for this game. They're just not ever releasing these odds for some reason this year, and in years past. I would say Ryder wins the series here. Then the next one's going to be Troy at Coastal Carolina, and you can bet there will be betting odds on this one. Here's the thing. So Coastal Carolina just went out to Omaha, and if you didn't see on Twitter, I put out a very fun tweet that I'm expecting a lot of attention on tonight and tomorrow morning. In my humble opinion, just because your coach is retiring and he won a national championship doesn't mean that they're going back to Omaha this year. There are pitching issues, and this team can't hit away from home. I mean, that was a great example of a big park in Omaha. They can't hit the long ball. They're not scoring. They aren't. I think they put up 7 runs total in the 2 games there. They got swept by Creighton in the midweek, and it's midweek pitching. It's not impressive. However, I do think going to and barbecue there is going to piss them off here. And they should win this home series against Troy. Troy's pitching has been not as good as I thought it was going to be this year. I had them winning the Sun Belt in the preseason. I didn't bet anything on it because I thought the odds were pretty short. I was kind of upset with just kind of that conference's odds. They had kind of listed every price short. It wasn't like any of them were really good values. It was kind of cheap. And that's how a couple of the games are for Thursday. Troy can bang too, though. So like this Springbrook Stadium is an offensive park. It favors the team that can hit the ball out of the yard. Troy could do that as well. Coastal's just tough to beat when they're playing at home, just like every other team when they're playing at home this year and in any year. The next series on my list here that begins on Friday, Miami, Florida at Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets are rolling. Miami sucks on the road. They're 2-10 this year. Georgia Tech, I will probably be betting this weekend at least once, because you get that Miami price tag. I love the Yellow Jackets here. They're really hot, and I'm fading the Canes on the road. We just have to wait on the Yellow Jackets pitching rotation announcement on that, because Miami's had basically the same starting rotation for most of the season. I would fade any of those guys. None of them are really consistent on the road. Georgia Tech, the right guy to tail is Finateri. He'll either go game 1 or game 2. And then if you're betting on either of the games that he's not pitching, it's just a little bit riskier, but I think the right team for this weekend is Georgia Tech. Clemson at Louisville is going to be tricky because it is a road series here for Clemson, but they're as healthy as they're going to get for the rest of the season. They got their ace Tristan Smith back. He didn't start the year as the Friday night starter. It was Billy Barlow, who's now been moved to the midweek guy, and he's been the midweek guy for the last couple of weeks. Tristan Smith got touched up by Pitt last weekend when they hit the road. I don't really expect him to be too much better. I don't think it's this week that he really turns it on. I think it'll be like further on down the road, but he is the team's best pitcher, starting pitcher at least. They've got plenty of depth on the staff. I do think, however, that Louisville's offense is going to come to play, and it has recently. They've been really on and off. But in the midweek, they put up like 14 runs on Western Kentucky in the first inning. They're hitting really well right now. But the thing that I wanted to mention about Clemson's health, I'm bouncing all over the place here. Andrew Chufo, their starting shortstop for the season. Like injury information is really hard to come by. This is not a new injury. He's been out for about 2 weeks. I heard somebody on the D1 Baseball network say that they don't expect him to return soon. So it's something like if he's going to come back at all, it's probably the postseason, but he might not come back at all this season. He is the starting shortstop. He's not a tremendous offensive piece. However, this team has been making some defensive mistakes lately. Really confusing too, because they acquired like 3 shortstops in the transfer portal, and Chufo was one of them. He was the best defensive guy of the bunch, but I didn't think it was going to be this much of a defensive hole at shortstop / third base, which has been the other position that has been making a couple errors lately. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that series. Virginia Tech at North Carolina. Another injury news here, or a bit of injury news here. Folger Boas is going to be out for quite some time, I'm hearing. He's been their Friday night starter this entire year. He's a freshman. Just a longer season for the kid. That happens from time to time, the freshman wall. I think from what I'm hearing, it's just arm fatigue, and you don't really know, when the full feel, when the numbness is going to go away, and all that stuff is kind of touch and go. So, I mean, it's going to be Jason DeCaro in game one. Virginia Tech has switched their rotation on and off a couple of weekends in a row here now. But they've got a couple of solid pieces up front. What is the kid's name? Now that I'm forgetting their best arm. There are two guys that I'm willing to back in this rotation. The one that they moved out of the Friday night role last weekend was Brett Renfro. They moved him to Saturday for some reason. I didn't really understand that. And Wyatt Parliament, they actually brought him out of the pen. I don't know how well he's been pitching lately, but he's the other guy that I just think is worthy of backing when it comes to this team and being on the road here at North Carolina, who's a very good home team. They only have like 3 home losses. Virginia Tech, though, on the road is solid as well. Parliament has ERAs in the 6s, so that might have been a permanent move to the bullpen. I have no idea. We'll wait on the pitching announcement for that series because that one could get interesting without, North Carolina's Friday starter and Folger Boas. Indiana State at Southern Illinois. I don't know if there's going to be betting odds for this one. Indiana State is ranked now. They just squeaked into the D1 baseball top 25. They are ranked 25th. They're like in the mix as a national host, not even just a regional host. In my own bracketology projection that I put out, I had Indiana State like 9th or 10th. I didn't realize it was that serious that they could be a national host, but top 16 is 100% in the mix again this year. And just my statement on this is the baseball gods are good because as of last year, everybody knows they had to surrender their home super regional to TCU because they were hosting the Special Olympics, the Indiana Special Olympics in Terre Haute. So I don't know if that's the same case this year, but I do think that they are going to get another host because that's just kind of how the baseball gods work. They're good on the mound and they're solid at the plate. They're not as good as they were last year. But Southern Illinois is a really good hitting team. They're at home here. I think this is the biggest speed bump Indiana State has left before the postseason. So interesting series there for the Sycamores at the Salukis. Then we got Mississippi State at Vanderbilt. And this series, I think Vandy wins. I think they take 2 of 3, but I think they lose one of the first 2 games. I'm just going to take a drink real quick. I think Cal Steven or Durangelo Sanja, one of the 2 top pitchers for Mississippi State, is going to take a game in this series. It'll be game 1 and game 2. Game 1, I'm predicting it's going to be Cal Steven against Bryce Cunningham for Vanderbilt. Game 2 is going to be Durangelo Sanja against Carter Holton. And then both of these teams have kind of mixed around their third starter of the weekend. So I'm just listing that as TBA. Both of those pitching matchups are excellent. Like these are 2 of the better starting rotations in the SEC. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt is going to be a fun Friday, Saturday series to watch this weekend. Georgia at Texas A&M. I do not have high expectations here for the Bulldogs in College Station. It's been really cool, I'll say. The last home series that Texas A&M had, they were playing Rattlenbach. Just every time they score a run. So basically, like when Tennessee scores runs in Knoxville, they're playing good old Tennessee, Rocky Top, Tennessee. Instead of that, they were playing like the drinking song Rattling Bar every time they scored a run, Texas A&M, and they scored 15 in the first game that they had that. So they have a really good mojo. I love that team. They have a couple of my saying is VAR instead of WAR, wins above replacement. I have invented VAR, vibes above replacement, and they've got a couple of guys that might lead the SEC in VAR. So I think Texas A&M wins at least 2, but honestly, I would put my prediction on sweep there for the Aggies. Texas, Oklahoma. We got the Red River shootout here between the Longhorns and Sooners. This is an interesting one because Texas has kind of inverted their starting rotation. So their Friday night starter, LeBaron Johnson Jr., hasn't been amazing this year, but he's starting in game 3s. So they go with their third best starter, their second best starter, their first best starter, at least in my opinion, because I think Ace Whitehead's better than Max Grubbs. But it goes Max Grubbs starting on Friday, Whitehead on Saturday, LeBaron Johnson Jr. on Sunday, and I think Oklahoma's got a chance to win game 1. Game 2 is going to be a real toss-up. I actually think I might have Texas winning the series. I think Ace Whitehead, he pitched very good last weekend against TCU. I think Whitehead could string together another good outing and knock off the Sooners. It's a tall task being on the road in Norman, but I think Texas takes game 3. That's how the TCU series went. Whichever team had the better pitcher, they were able to shut down the other offense. The Big 12 this year is really kind of nobody's really taking it by the balls. It is up for grabs. Oklahoma had a nice sweep last week. I think it was against BYU. Oklahoma State's now playing BYU in a bounce back. That series begins Thursday. We'll talk about that in a hot minute. The next series that we'll talk about real quick is Florida at Arkansas. The nugget / note that I wrote down for this series is Arkansas's 29-1 at Baum Walker this year. Their only home loss was in the first weekend of the year when it was like 40 degrees against James Madison. That's the only time that Arkansas's lost at home. Florida's best chance of winning that is, again, when Jack Caglione pitches, but in game 3. But I wouldn't be betting on that this week. I bet on it when they played Vanderbilt. Arkansas is a different animal than Vanderbilt. And, even with Arkansas's offensive woes, they hit better when they're at home. When they're in the friendly confines, they're stroking it a bit better than they are away from home. Penultimate Friday notable series is Gonzaga at San Diego. This series is between the top 2 teams in the West Coast Conference here. San Diego's 10-3 at home. Gonzaga's 6-18 on the road. They scheduled pretty well in non-conference there, but everything on paper is telling me to go against the WCC Titan here in Gonzaga. San Diego's got an 854 team OPS. Gonzaga only 694. And San Diego as a team has a 463 ERA. They're the better starting rotation, in my opinion, for all 3 days. Gonzaga, they have a 606 team ERA here. I think this is the Torero series to lose, given that they're at their own ballpark. The last series here is Arizona at Washington. Arizona's coming in red hot. And honestly, this is a team that I wanted to be bullish on in the preseason, but it was kind of the Pac-12 had a few teams that in the preseason I thought were going to be a little bit better, and Arizona seemed like they were rebuilding, especially on the offensive side. They're young, but they've really strung it together, and this pitching has been incredible, which has definitely been a change from years past. It just goes to show you that in year 1, the investment that Chip Hale, the head coach there in Tucson, made into the pitching development and technology there has paid off in dividends. Jackson Kent, Clark Candiotti, Cam Waldy, 1, 2, 3 is a legit rotation. Probably like top. I'm gonna say loosely top 3 because I don't know off the top of my head if they're 1 or 2. I'm not gonna get in trouble by saying 1 or 2, but Arizona's right up there in the Pac-12. And I think their 1-2-3 is better than Washington's, and that's kind of Washington's calling card this year. And it was kind of last year, but this year they're rough offensively, and the pitching hasn't lived up to expectations, specifically in Jared Engman, who's their big returner from last year in the rotation, and he just hasn't been great. So shout out to the YouTube chats rolling here. Dave Matola, he's the Arizona Wildcats fan. He says LFG Cats. Ryan Hasty's doing the Wildcats song here from Colby's soundboard. NC Street News says great picks last week in Noah. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in and having interest in tailing and following the show. John Smith says, what sites are you using for college baseball odds? So I think DraftKings is number one. They are first to market with their odds, and also kind of have the best odds. The other books kind of copy them and will either vig it one way or the other by offering you like 5 cents or 10 cents less to the dollar on most of the picks. But I mean, if you're looking to voyage elsewhere other than DK, MGM is good. Bet Rivers is great if you're looking for futures and stuff like that, but they're also late with the game lines. Caesars, FanDuel, and then if you're in a valid state or a state that they're legal in or have authorization in, Circa is good too. But yeah, those are kind of the legal books in America that offer it. Hard Rock as well in some states. Ryan Hasty said Coastal lost today in extra innings. Yeah, I talked about that at the beginning. Like, I'm not high on the Coastal team this year, and I wasn't in the preseason either. Like everybody else was kind of giving them the Gilmore, tip of the cap. Let's bet on them in the preseason. I was never there with this pitching staff. What is the site that you were using to show all the pitching matchups last weekend? That's called Friday Starters. They do outstanding work. You can follow them on Twitter too. Friday Starters. Outstanding account. I couldn't recommend them more. I doubt they're going to be free for much longer. They're probably charging at some point because their work is legit, and everybody else that is doing the same thing is either contemplating putting a subscription price on their website, or they already have one. So Friday Starters, use them while they're available, but don't let the word get too out there. Like this show is like the biggest college baseball gambling show out there specifically. So just by me stating it will grow, I think, which is some of the reason. Like I think they do great work. They're great guys too. But part of me really hopes that they don't blow up because yeah, they do amazing work. Real quick before we jump into the Thursday series / games with betting odds and the 11.7 pick'em, are you thinking of entering the Circa Survivor or Circa Millions contest but you don't live in Nevada? Because there's no problem if you are looking to hire a proxy. It's very easy to do so. You can just hire a proxy, submit the picks that you want for each week in these Circa Survivor, Circa Millions contests for your chance to win millions of dollars. Sign up in Las Vegas in person, and then you can submit your picks through your proxy. We've partnered up with the gold standard of proxies over at footballcontestproxy.com. Plus, if you use the promo code SGP at checkout, you'll save $50 off the proxy fees. That's right. Just go over to footballcontestproxy.com. That's footballcontestproxy.com. Promo code SGP to get $50 off. All right, let's talk about some of these Thursday matchups. 3 of them are not even bettable, in my opinion. It's ridiculous. I want no piece in any of them, to be honest. But they're fun to kind of walk through here, and I'll give out my same notes that I just did for the game series starting on Friday for the ones that are starting here on Thursday. But if some of these prices are going to repeat on game 2, game 3, it's just not worth it. So all of these games are starting at 7:00 or 7:30. First one on the DraftKings lineup is BYU at Oklahoma State. The Pokes are minus 345 and BYU's plus 250. I don't have pitching matchups for any of these 4 games, just because most of the writers don't get them out until Thursday. But the Pokes are 17-5 at O'Brate Stadium this year. Plus, it's a bounce back weekend after their loss last weekend, their series loss last weekend against Kansas State. So BYU, they showed the ability to get swept last weekend at home. I think they get swept here against Oklahoma State. I believe it. I don't want to put that statement out in the air if I'm not 100% correct, but I think BYU got swept last weekend against Oklahoma. I'm looking it up right now, real quick. I don't know why I stated it without knowing 100%, but I think that's what happened. Yeah, they got swept by Oklahoma. I was right. I should have just went with my gut and kept going. But yeah, Oklahoma State's just as good as OU, in my opinion. I think at home, like BYU was at home and they lost 3 straight to Oklahoma. I think the Pokes, they bounce back early. I think they get both of the first 2 with Sam Garcia and Brian Holiday on the mound. Game 3 could be a toss-up, but I think Oklahoma State in all 3 would be solid picks. The second game that we'll discuss here that begins on Thursday, this one's the fun one. A lot of teams have done like some cancer games or are starting to do some like annual cancer games. The first one and like kind of the most notable one is Boston College. This is their ALS game this year. It's played at Fenway Park. Virginia at BC. The Eagles are plus 175. The Cavs are minus 230. If you were to bet one game today, it's not like my pick would be BC. I think they just get up for this game. Virginia is not as great on the road, just like many other college baseball teams. Boston College actually has a losing record when they're at their home field, but being at Fenway Park, I think will juice them up a little bit. Plus 175 on BC is the game that I would bet the most, or the only one that I would actually bet here on Thursday. Neither pitching staff had really good weeks last week. Boston College pitched terribly against Notre Dame, and they didn't really show up offensively either. They got swept by BC, or they got swept by Notre Dame, who was in last in the ACC. I don't know if they're still in last, but UVA, they can hit. Even though they can't pitch, they can hit. I think they win this series, but I think BC's best chance at winning a game is here on Thursday in Fenway. We'll move to the 7:30 games here. There are 2 games starting at 7:30. Missouri at Tennessee. Missouri's plus 300. Tennessee's minus 425. Again, I don't have the pitching matchups for this one. But the way that Tennessee has done it the last 3 weeks or so, they've started Chris Stamos. They've brought AJ Causey out of the pen as like a piggyback starting pitcher role. He's the better of the 2. And Missouri, they've gone with Lunsford on Friday the last couple of weeks. He's unbackable. The only arm that I like on this Missouri staff is Javen Pimentel. And I've said that from the get-go this season. He's their best arm. He's the only guy that I want to have any interest in betting. And honestly, even with their best arm, the only thing that I've played much with Missouri at all this year has been the run line. I've been taking like plus 2.5 when Pimentel's pitching. There was an exception last Sunday when I took Missouri against LSU because LSU had lost 5 straight SEC Sunday matchups, and then they win against Missouri. So I ate shit when I broke my Missouri rule, but that is the Missouri rule. When anybody other than Pimentel's pitching, it's a no bet. Because I mean, they knocked off when Pimentel was pitching against LSU. They knocked off the Tigers. So yeah, he's the only guy that I want to have any interest in. I do think I said it in the preseason. I stand by it. Tony Vitello, alum of Missouri, he could take his foot off the gas. Who knows? I think Tennessee sweeps, but there's a chance that Missouri wins a game. I would not bet on it, but that would be why. Um, Last one here, Alabama at Ole Miss. I think this is the most 50-50 coin flip of the Thursday slate. But I don't love Alabama at the minus price on the road in game one. And I don't know who's starting for Ole Miss. I do know that I think they got um, is it Liam Doyle, who was out? No, it wasn't Liam Doyle. It was JT Quinn. Um, their Friday night starter from the beginning of the year. I think it was Quinn. He's back. He's healthy. I don't know if they're going to start him. I don't know what they're doing here. So this one was I can't give you a firm answer on the Thursday game for Ole Miss against Alabama here. But my note here was, that's the other thing. So Ole Miss's staff is getting healthier. Alabama's on short rest because of the rain out that they had against Texas A&M last Friday. They played 2 games on Saturday and then a game on Sunday. But their Friday starter was pushed back to Saturday. This is a terrible scheduling quirk now because now their series is starting here on Thursday. He's going to be on short rest. So whoever they go with, somebody's going to be on short rest unless they go with somebody that didn't pitch at all that weekend. So, that's an interesting note. My pick would be on Ole Miss in this game if I can figure out who's pitching for the Rebs there. But yeah, I like the spot for Ole Miss anyways. All right. So that wraps up kind of the notes for the series that I don't have betting odds on, but will probably be offered or were just notable series. 6 11.7 pick'em series this week. There was only one where there wasn't 6. It was like the third weekend when they had 8. But the first one is Navy at Army. Top 2 teams here in the Patriot League this season. This is the first time since I've done this show that Navy's actually on paper should be competitive with Army. I think Army wins game 1. Justin Lehman is their ace. He's got a 1.69 ERA. He's better than anybody that Navy has to offer. But in game 2, it should be a toss-up on the pitching matchup. I think Navy has the advantage starting pitcher-wise in game 3. Should be very interesting here. I'm going with Army just because their program pedigree. I'm not fading that. Plus, offensively, they are the bit of a better team this season. 106 WRC plus compared to the Midshipmen 86 WRC plus. So Moneyline Mac is going to love to hear that I am on the Army Black Knights for this weekend's series. The next one's an interesting one. An Ohio Valley Conference series between Morehead State and Southeast Missouri State. The 11.7 guys threw this one in there because they've had a fun little rivalry in between their podcasts. But a matchup between 2 top 4 teams here in the OVC. Morehead State's 9-13 on the road. They have a 7.34 team ERA. SEMO's got the advantage pitching matchup wise in game 3. I think they'll be able to hit against Morehead's pitching staff. So give me the Redbirds here at home against Morehead State, and we move. So that is Army and SEMO for me here. The next series is Southern Miss at Louisiana. U of L is 21-6 at Russo Park this season. Southern Miss only 8-8 on the road. Louisiana, I think, is going to have a nice bounce back series pitching wise. They've had a really good staff all like the middle of the season from like the 3rd weekend on till the 10th weekend. And then they go to Coastal Carolina, which I said it's a shoebox. It's a pitcher's park. It's a launch pad for any good hitting team, and Coastal Carolina is one. They rake at their home park. It was a predictable, letdown or predictable series where the Louisiana staff is going to struggle. I think they bounce back here at home against Southern Miss, who's not a great hitting team. They're also a very strong pitching staff, but I think Louisiana at home is also going to get this series. So I know it's corny when you go with all the home teams, but I'm currently sitting like 5th or 6th right now, 3 games out of first place. I go with the home teams because every series, and it's right because I mean, every series that they choose is a 50-50 toss-up series. Well, in those 50-50 toss-up series, the best edge is to go with the home team. It's hard to win on the road in college sports. It just is. So, like 85% of my picks are the home team in this contest, but it works. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone, but I don't know who would want to, stray from that. But all right. So Army, SEMO, Louisiana, first 3 series there. We're going with another home team in this fourth one that we're going to talk about. Oregon State is 25-1 at Goss Stadium this year. They're playing Oregon in the last edition of the Civil War under the Pac-12 emblem. I'm going with the Beavs. They just got swept against Cal. Honestly, they are a little bit nicked up in the lineup, but Oregon's not a very strong lineup either. They have tremendous pitching depth. Oregon State should be able to hit against them. And they kind of just always kind of run the state of Oregon. Like, I would feel the most, even though it's the rivalry, I would feel if I was still alive in Survivor, I would feel the most confident here with the Beavers this weekend. Then we go to Kentucky at South Carolina. Again, another strong home team. South Carolina 20-6 at Founders Park this season. However, Kentucky's 14-2 on the road. And honestly, like, Arkansas's pitching staff is great. I don't think they were tremendous last weekend, and they still held South Carolina to low scoring games. Kentucky's got a better offense than Arkansas. A lot of people is just throwing the small ball label onto Kentucky. This year, they're a pretty good offense. Like, I think this is the leverage play for me this weekend. I'm going with Kentucky again against South Carolina. It didn't pay off for me taking Kentucky at home against Tennessee, but the public was on Tennessee last week. I'm once again trying to leverage myself against the field. I'm taking the Cats in a series that I think they're pretty live in at South Carolina. We're going Kentucky here. The final series that we're going to talk about here on today's show is Florida State at Duke. Duke is 19-6 at home. Again, just another really strong home team. Florida State's starting rotation still isn't very healthy right now. They have Jamie Arnold, who is the certified ace of that staff, but Cam Leiter's not back. And the third name is escaping my mind right now. I'm embarrassed. But yeah, he's hurt too right now. And Duke, they tried out Jonathan Santucci in game 1. He struggles on the road, but here at home, he should be fine in Durham. The game 1 is really going to determine this series, in my opinion, because game 3, I think, is a toss-up because Duke just throws out a bullpen game in game 3. Their bullpen's better than Florida State's. However, Florida State was really in that game. They were in the game against Chase Burns. They had the lead for 6 innings. They were competitive in the Josh Hartle start. They won it. And then the third start, they had the lead for another chunk of that game and gave it up. Like, Florida State was in the series in all 3 games at Wake Forest. Here they go at Duke. I think the difference here is that we saw earlier in the year when Duke played Wake Forest that the Blue Devils were the better team than the Deacons. So I feel good about taking Duke here. But, this series nerves me a little bit just from me being impressed by the Noles last weekend in Wake Forest. Honestly, if Florida State loses 2 or 3 or they get swept by Duke here, I will probably be jumping on. I had them to get to Omaha in the preseason. I will probably be jumping on them to win a national championship, knowing that they are getting some pieces back here, and this little rut that they're in is because they're missing some arms. So right now they pushed up a couple of their top arms from the pen into the rotation, and that has in turn allowed the pen to struggle a little bit lately. So that's my viewpoint on some of the biggest series this weekend, the 11.7 Pick'em contest, as well as we've got 4 bets that you can bet on Thursday. I don't advise betting on any of them. If you were to bet one, it would be BC. If we catch a BC plus 2.5, you'll probably see me end up on the Eagles, like a minus 120, minus 110 price, minus 115, whatever it comes out at. That's probably going to be my only bet of the day, honestly. I do not like the board tomorrow. It's kind of ridiculous how two of these games came out at over plus or over minus 330. Just kind of crazy. In my opinion, I don't agree with some of the pricing here, but I don't think the dogs are live enough to play. I'll check up on the YouTube chat one more time before we get out of here. KG Visual says, yeah, I don't love either of these teams. LOL, pass for me. I forget one game that we were on, probably the Alabama Ole Miss one. Hasty says, I'll probably end up betting the Vols. He also says, Army Navy this weekend. Let's go. Does it get lit? Last year it did not. It was not living up to expectation. Like when it goes to Army, I feel like they're more lit than Navy, just because their program has been better over the years. So I would expect it to be fun this weekend. Hasty's asking if any of the FSU pitchers are back. No, they're still missing 2 starters this weekend from what I've heard and seen on Twitter. Stay tuned with me on Twitter at NoahB77_. I'll be tweeting out pitcher news as we get it throughout the day on Thursday. Hasty saying likes for Noah always grinding. Yes, please. YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to TCE football, basketball, baseball content year round. And also, if I'll keep it going. If you leave a review on Spotify or Apple / a rating, Spotify, you can only do a 5-star or a 3-star or 1-star rating on Spotify. Just take a screenshot, DM me, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, either myself or the show at TC on SGPN. And I'm giving away Chinook Seedery bags of seeds. I've responded to a good chunk of the people that have, and I have at least opened up the DMs from everybody, and I have responded. I have not quite finished the conversation because there are quite a few. I appreciate everybody that left reviews over the last week. Sunflower seeds are amazing. So, yeah, I'm willing to give them away if you drop a review. Anyways, thanks for tuning in to the Weekend 11 preview. You've been listening to the College Experience. You better start thinking about yours. Adios, amigos.